Welcome to Paranormal Nightshift, your home for everything that goes bump in the dark, and your fan stories told right here. Today's story comes from Jada, and it is titled The Old Miller Farm. The dust swirled around my boots as I climbed the rickety metal ladder, the roar of the grain truck filling my ears. It was another long night unloading on the old Miller farm, the kind that dragged on under the endless expanse of the night sky. My co-workers had warned me about the tapping on the bins, a rhythmic drumming that seemed to come from the inside of the giant metal containers. Just the grain settling, they'd assured me, but the sound always sent shivers down my spine. Tonight was no different. As I heaved open the hatch and stepped onto the mound of golden wheat, the tapping started, echoing eerily in the night air. I shrugged it off, focusing on the job at hand. Sweat dripped down my forehead as I shoveled, the only company the rhythmic clatter and the distant chirping of crickets. Finally, the last truck rumbled away, its taillights disappearing into the darkness. With a sigh of relief, I started my descent down the ladder. The farm was deserted now, bathed in an eerie quiet. Just as I reached the bottom rung, a blood-curdling scream pierced the night. It was a sound I knew all too well, the unmistakable panic in my boyfriend's voice. He was working a couple of fields over, and that scream was coming from his direction. My heart hammered against my ribs as I sprinted towards my truck, adrenaline flooding my system. Every rustle in the tall corn seemed to hold a hidden threat. I scrambled into the cab, slammed the door, and fumbled with the keys. The engine roared to life, and I peeled out of the gravel lot, not daring to look back until I was sure I was a safe distance away. Back at the bunkhouse, parked next to the rows of identical trailers, a fresh wave of terror washed over me. The deformed handprint. There, smeared across my windshield, was a grotesque imprint, fingers twisted and fused at unnatural angles. It looked like something out of a nightmare. My trembling hands reached for the radio, desperate to confirm my worst fear. But the radio was silent, dead. Had the battery died during the drive? Panic clawed at my throat. Suddenly the scream ripped through the night again, this time closer, right outside my trailer. I ripped open the door, heart pounding a frantic tattoo against my ribs. But the parking lot was empty. Rushing back inside, I slammed the door and locked it with shaking hands. My phone buzzed on the table, a call from a boyfriend. "Hey, everything okay?" he asked, his voice laced with concern. "The screams!" I choked out, my voice barely above a whisper. "I thought that was you out there." There was a startled silence on the other end, then confusion. "Screams," he said. "What screams? I haven't made a sound. I've been trying to reach you on the radio, but it keeps cutting out." A cold dread settled in my stomach. My radio hadn't died. Someone or something had turned it off. And they were watching us. This wasn't just some prank. This was something else entirely. The next 2 nights were a blur of terror. More screams, unexplained radio malfunctions, and the unsettling feeling of being watched. Finally, on our last night, word reached us of a local farmer who'd shot a deer on the Miller property. We were sent to retrieve the carcass, arriving at the scene around 1 or 2 in the morning. The farmer, a grizzled old man with a weathered face, shook his head as we approached. "Be careful out here at night," he said, his voice low. "Strange things happen around these parts." He went on to tell us about the skinwalkers, local legends of shape-shifting creatures known to lure and torment their victims. A chill ran down my spine. The tapping, the screams, the deformed handprint, it all made a horrifying kind of sense. Those 2 weeks on the Miller farm had been a terrifying encounter with something beyond human, something that had left a permanent mark on my memory, a chilling reminder of the darkness that can lurk in the most unexpected places. With that being said, Jada, thank you so much for your story, and if you have a story you would like to submit, feel free to do so right here on Paranormal Night Shift.